Okay, so chapter 24 is a digestive system, and we're going to talk about the different organs of the digestive system, including its two parts. There is part that's a canal starting from the mouth, moving all the way down until the anus at the end. This is just a tract, plus additional organs attached to it. So we'll go part by part, starting from the mouth and moving down pharynx, esophagus, stomach, small intestine, large intestine until the end. And then the additional organs like the liver, like the pancreas, and so on. And we will talk about anatomy and physiology of all these different parts, and we will talk about the structure of each one of those. So digestive system, obviously, nutrients. It's all about nutrients. We eat, we digest, and then we absorb. We take what we need. We eliminate what we don't need at the end. This is the overall picture, but we're going to break it down into different parts. So again, the digestive tract, or the digestive system, I'm sorry, is two parts: tract and accessory organs. Tract is that long tube starting from the mouth, ending to the anus, and the things move in one direction only. It doesn't go back. Mouth to pharynx, pharynx to esophagus, esophagus, and so on. It moves down all the way until it exits from the anus. And then there are the accessory organs, liver, gallbladder, the teeth, the tongue, and so on, the different parts. So here's the alimentary tract, starting from the mouth, moving down to the pharynx, to the esophagus, stomach, small intestine, large intestine, until the anus at the end. And these are the accessory organs: liver, gallbladder, pancreas, beside the tongue and the other glands. So we will be talking about in the different processes, starting from ingestion. You ingest, you put the food in your mouth. Then digestion. Digestion is two parts. When you say digestion, which digestion? Mechanical or chemical digestion? The one that we always start with is the mechanical part. We put the food in our mouth, we chew on it, we put like saliva on it, and then it moves down the esophagus, go to the stomach, still again mechanical, and then the other part is the chemical digestion. So digestion is two parts. And then there will be the absorption, which is basically after your goal with the digestion with the two parts together. Your goal is to break down these bulk pieces not only into smaller pieces. No, you want to break it down to the smallest unit specifically, and we'll talk about that. So each one of those proteins, carbohydrates, lipids, you want to break it down all the way to the building unit. The building unit protein is amino acids. This is your goal. And this is what can be absorbed. For sugar, monosaccharides, not just glucose, monosaccharides. For fat, fatty acids. So this is your goal, but you do it in two different steps: mechanical, followed by digestion. There will be secretion for things that is going to help you, and then you're going to absorb, and the remnants will be defecated at the end. So what's ingestion? Simply, you put the food in your mouth. Mechanical digestion is start in the mouth, of course. This is the crushing and chewing of the food, and then you propel it down the digestive tract, while the chemical is further breaking down the small pieces into the building units of each one of those. Secretions, we have a lot of secretions to talk about. This is a big part. What kind of secretions are we going to secrete? It's a lot of things, but we will go one by one. It's enzymes and acids and hormones and buffers and salt and so on. Absorption is simply when you end up having the smallest unit that you want. This is your goal. This is the only thing that actually cross the digestive tract wall, which is the building unit. This is your goal: amino acids, fatty acids, monosaccharides, and nucleic acids for the fourth one. These are the organic molecules that we eat. So you want it to be small enough to pass, and this is your goal. When it is small enough to pass, it will cross the wall of the intestine specifically and go to the blood, and we call that absorption. At the end, the remnants and the waste products will be eliminated by defecation. The whole digestive tract, and I talked about this in the lab, if you guys still remember, the lining of the digestive tract is the same. Starting from here, going all the way down, same thing. It's mucosa, submucosa, muscularis, and serosa at the end. Serosa or adventitia, it's the same thing. Serosa adventitia. It's connective tissue cover. That's what it is. So we will talk about that, and we will talk about the different linings, starting with the mucosa, and we will learn that the mucosa is different from part to part. The very inner part, the part that's in contact with the food, is different in the mouth, esophagus, stomach. Why? Because each one of those is dealing with different things. It's common sense. When you put the food in your mouth, it's big chunks, right? So you wanted this part to be resistant to the mechanical trauma, right? While from the stomach down, it's already pieces. There is no mechanical trauma anymore. Okay? You're dealing with more of acid. So that will determine what do we have in the mucosa and what we are dealing with. Are we talking about mechanical stress or chemical stress? There are different types of mucosa to help you deal with each one of those, and this is important. We will learn it. There is the bacteria that's already in our gut, and there are other bacteria that we're going to ingest ultimately with the food. Of course, nobody eats sterilized food, and even if you do, by the time you put it in your mouth, you will get some bacteria anyway. So that's normal. Already inside your gut, there is bacteria, okay? And this is called the normal flora. The normal flora. It's the bacteria that exists with you, and not necessarily bad. It's usually either not harmful sometimes, and we will talk about this. It's actually beneficial. You cannot even eliminate it. You need it. You need these bacteria, and all of that is coming. The same way that we talked about the serous membranes. Remember when we did the lung, we talked about the pleura, the two layers. When we did the heart, talked about the pericardium, the two layers. Remember uh, the two bags from the supermarket. You got something, you put it into two bags. So one of them is inner one. What do we call it? Visceral, and the outer one is called parietal, and in between there is serous fluid to keep them together. It's all the same. Surrounding the lung, just the name is different. Surrounding the lung, pleura. Surrounding the heart, pericardium. Here we call it peritoneum. So the peritoneum is also two layers, visceral layer and parietal layer, same thing. Which one is adherent to the organs? The visceral one. And where is the parietal one? It's outside, lining the whole abdomen. And there is peritoneal fluid, just like the pleural fluid. And we should not have those two layers, just like what we talked about in the lung, the two layers surrounding the lung. They should have just a thin film of serous fluid to keep them together, and that's it. You cannot have anything else. No blood, there should be no pus, there should be no air, nothing. Just this thin film. Same thing here. And if you have fluids, we will call it ascites. Ascites is the presence of or buildup of the peritoneal fluid. The one thing that's different, if we talk about pleura, pleura is just covering one organ, lung, that's it, right? Pericardium, heart, that's it. No big deal. But here it's different because you're talking about a lot of organs, right? So what happened is The outer one is out there, and the inner one is not separate. Here is one for the liver, done. Here is one for the stomach. No, it's not like this. It goes in a big fold, cover one, and go around, cover the next one, and make a fold, and go around, make a fold. So there are a lot of folds that we end up having from that peritoneal membrane, and these folds are called mesentery. And this is important to remember. So the mesentery is a double layer of the peritoneal membrane surrounding the organs and and attaching them to each other and to the wall. Okay? It's cover of the organs. This is one. It's not separated, so it connects the organs. Number three, it attach these organs to the wall. You cannot have like a liver in the air like this, just in the space. You cannot have it like that, right? It's going to fall, it's going to move. No, it doesn't happen because it is attached to the abdominal wall somehow. So mesentery is important. And if I ask you what's a mesentery first, it's a double sheet of peritoneal membrane. Why do you have the mesentery? Two things or three: surrounding the organs, making an attachment to keep it in place. Number three, number three, the blood supply and the nerves and the lymphatics that's going to the organ, they cannot run in a space. They cannot run like in the cavity just like that. If that's the case, when you twist, you're just going to cut any artery and any vein, any nerve. No, they run within the fold. So this is why we have the mesentery. All these combined: cover, attachment, stabilization, providing a route to the blood vessels and nerves and lymphatics. So what's suspending the liver in I mean the digestive system in place? The mesentery. Part of it is in the back, dorsal, and part of it in the front. That's called the ventral. And the thing is, some of these, just like if you guys remember in a cardiovascular system, we talked about the different things that used to exist in the fetus, and then they obliterate and change after birth. Do you remember these? Um, Something like ductus arteriosus that become ligamentum arteriosum, ductus venosus. Do you remember that? Ligamentum venosum. We have something similar here. Okay, everything that used to work in the fetus, it's doing a specific job temporarily. Once we're born, we don't need it anymore. So instead of being something like a duct or a blood vessel, all of these are going to become ligaments. And ligaments have different names, and we will talk about this. Okay. Uh, Part of the peritoneal fold. One more time. Why do you have peritoneal fold? The peritoneum is two: parietal outside, visceral inside. Is every one of those like a ball separated? No, it is not. It cover, connect, cover, connect. At the end, it connects all of them to the wall. We call that the mesentery. There is a specific part of that mesentery that's called greater and lesser omentum. The one that stabilizes the stomach is called lesser omentum, and I will show you why did we call it this name. Everything is happening for a reason. I don't have to go one by one and I tell you the function of each part of the mesentery because all of them have the same function. Attachment, cover, plus providing a route. For what? For anything going to the organ. Artery, vein, nerve, lymphatics, anything. You cannot have anything hanging in your abdomen or in your body cavity. You can't have that. You have to provide something for it. So this is the general function. So lesser omentum. What's the lesser omentum? This is part of the peritoneum. What's the function? Same function, just like any other part. Stabilization and route. For Everything. Blood vessels, nerves, everything. Where is it exactly? Between the liver and the lesser curvature of the stomach. I will show you the picture, but you guys remember how the stomach looks like? It looks like this. Looks like my hand like this, right? Look at this curve right up here. This is a small curve, isn't it? Compare it to this one outside, right? This is called the lesser curvature. This one here is lesser curvature, a small one. Look at this outside. This is the greater curvature. So here, attached to the lesser curvature, to the liver above, lesser omentum. Coming from the greater curvature, greater omentum. Did we get where the name came from? Lesser omentum, lesser curvature. Greater omentum, greater curvature. It depends on which curvature of the stomach is it coming from. The other ligament is called the falciform ligament. And this is basically, we know it is our liver, right? Our liver is here, right? Of course, the liver is a heavy organ. It has to be attached to different things. In the lab, I told you guys that it's right lobe and left lobe. Do we remember this? Which one is bigger? Right or left? Right lobe is bigger. Do you remember what's in between the two? There is something white. I showed you guys that. There is something white in between the right lobe and left lobe. Do you remember that? It didn't look like a ligament, but it is a ligament. This is the falciform ligament. It attaches in between the two lobes to the abdominal wall in the front and to the diaphragm above. Goes like this. Falciform ligament. Function of each one of those is important. It's a question. Okay, and that's why I'm explaining it. Why do you have lesser omentum? Where is it? Why do you have the falciform ligament? Where is it? The other one is the greater omentum, and it is hanging from the greater curvature of the stomach. Always make sense of the name. Lesser omentum. Why? Lesser curvature. Greater omentum. Why? Greater curvature. This is where it is attached to. And there is a lot of fat all over this greater omentum. And reasonable fat is always good. We have good fat. Not all the fat is bad. Like if you're gaining weight, you hate it, yes, that's okay. But the normal fat that we have inside, they have a function in there. And the most important function, why do we have fat around our heart? Why do we have fat around our viscera? Or why? Around even the eye. We have fat around the eye. Why is all of that? Protection and act as a cushion. The fat is soft tissues, right? So it can absorb shock. If it is more, this is not good, but the normal amount is always good. And there are two reasons for having the fat anywhere: protection, act as a cushion, and storage. You store extra energy. Now, the peritoneum that I talked about, it's surrounding all these abdominal organs from outside. This is which one? It's surrounding all of them outside like this. Is that the parietal or the visceral? Parietal. This is the one that's like a big bag. The visceral is the one inside, right? Okay. All abdominal organs are inside this peritoneal cavity except, and you have to remember this, pancreas and kidney, plus other things, but these are the most important two. Where is it? It's not in the bag, it's in the abdomen. Yes, not in the bag, not in the peritoneal sac. It's behind it. And behind it in Greek is retro. So these are called the retroperitoneal organs. Retroperitoneal organs. If you open, like if a surgeon is opening, he will not, of course, he will not find these organs inside the peritoneal cavity, just like all these other organs. No, it is not. It's behind them, behind the peritoneum. We call it retroperitoneal organs. Most importantly, pancreas and kidney. They are not inside the peritoneal sac, it's behind it. The mesentery, remember the mesentery is all over the abdomen. This is the folds of the peritoneum, right? Are we following? All of these are called mesentery. Greater omentum is part of it. Lesser omentum is part of it. Mesocolon is one of them. It's all over the place. It's any one of these folds. Mesocolon is the one that is attached or associated with the large intestine. So look at this picture right here. This is the stomach. Remember we talked about the parts of the stomach, the cardia, the fundus, the body, the pylorus. Look at this curve right here. This one curve here. And look at the outer one. This one here is the small one. Lesser curvature. The omentum that's attached to it from that curvature to the liver above, the liver is here. So the one that attach the lesser curvature to the liver, lesser omentum. Here it is. Look at this one, they cut it. But in the actual models, you will see it hanging down like this. So this is the greater omentum. How to recognize it? Attached to the greater curvature. This is the mesocolon right here because it is attached to the colon. Now, if you look at this, look at the outer one. Here is the bag I was talking about. Look at this white surrounding all of it. And then look at these, like it surrounds, okay, and then make a fold. Surround and go to the next. Go to the next. Surround, next. Surround, next. So it's not separated. It's not separate organs. It is connected by the different parts of the mesentery. And look at the fat inside, the yellow. The fat is there for stabilization, protection, act as a cushion, and reserve. Look here. This is the liver. So surrounding the liver, does it end at this? No. It moves down, attaching to the stomach. And then it moves down, attached to the colon. And then it moves down, attached to the small intestine. See how it's making all these folds? Or these folds. Can you see this? This. Any one of these white folds are the different parts of the mesentery. And look exactly where the lesser omentum is. Lesser curvature to the liver. Look at the greater, from the greater curvature, and it hang down, covering the different organs. Histology is what I already talked about. All of them are the same, minor differences, and I will tell you the differences. Generally speaking, if you get a cut section in any one of these parts of the tract, mucosa, submucosa, muscularis, serosa, all of them, from inside to outside. And this is something important to remember. Mucosa, submucosa, muscularis, serosa. You have to remember it in that sequence, from inside moving outside. Look at this picture right here. And we have something kind of similar to like this piece alone. Do you guys remember this one? This big model with showing the different layers. So all the way inside, here is a mucosa with the mucosal folds, villi. Does anybody remember why do we have villi in the intestine? Increase surface area for what? For absorption. Yes. It increases the surface area for absorption. This is in the mucosa. How about the submucosa? Yes, look at the submucosa here. You will see blood vessels, lymphatics. Do you remember the lymphatics? And nerve plexuses. Does anybody remember the nerve plexus in the submucosa? What is it called? What is that white plexus in the submucosa? Nerves. Submucosal plexus. It's in the submucosa, but there's another name for it. Mesenteries. I told you guys, usually they ask about if it's two names in the lab, right? How about the other one? The other one is in the muscles, myenteric, myenteric plexus. And then you have the muscles everywhere in the digestive tract, inner, circular, just like this, circle after circle after circle, surrounding the tube. And there is one that's longitudinal. The only exception to that is what we already saw in the lab, which is the stomach. What's the third one in the stomach? Only in the stomach. What's the third layer of muscles in the wall of the stomach only? It's not circular, longitudinal. Yes, this is everywhere. There is one extra in the stomach. What is it? Nobody remember? Oblique. There is oblique in the stomach. So everywhere, circular, longitudinal. Stomach, there is an extra one, which is the oblique layer. And I told you guys already, the only way in the lab to recognize these is not how it looks like. It's mucosa, submucosa, muscularis. The inner one is always circular, irrespective of what you think it looks like. And the outer one toward the serosa is a longitudinal one, and that's it. This is your only way. So if you see two muscles, two layers, which is which? The one that's closer to the mucosa, circular. The one that's closer to the serosa, longitudinal. Okay? Here is exactly, or very close, of the model that we have. Here, this is the mucosa up here, all of this, including the villi to increase surface area for absorption. Inside this big villus, there is a villi and microvilli. So inside this, you will have the blood vessels, and you have this green thing. What is this? There's a name for this. What's the green inside here? Something starts with L. Lacteals. Yes, the lacteals. And what are the lacteals? It's lymphatic capillaries. But what's the function? Fat absorption. Yes. Even though it is lymphatic, yes, but fat absorption. Fat absorption. And then the submucosa with everything in there, arteries, veins, lymphatics, nerve plexus. What's the nerve plexus here in the submucosa? Submucosal, also known as mesenteries. You should remember. And here are the layers of the muscles. Which one is this? Circular, because it's closer to mucosa. How about this? Longitudinal, closer to serosa. Look at this here, it looks different in the other section. Don't count on it. It is location. Closer to the inside, closer to the mucosa. But the longitudinal one is closer to the outside or closer to the serosa. Okay? All right. Look at this. This is the myenteric plexus I was talking about, the yellow. And this is the submucosal plexus. So you will be asked about this, lab and lecture. Okay, and that's why I'm repeating. Here are the glands. These are the glands in the mucosa. Obviously, they secrete on the surface. And here is the mucosa. The mucosa is the innermost layer, and it is epithelium. And there is something here that I didn't talk about, but here it is. I want you to look at this layer specifically. You see this layer? This is separating the mucosa here from the submucosa. Okay? This is a layer of the muscles. I'm not talking about those two. This is inner, this is the actual muscles. But there is a tiny extra layer of muscle here that's between the mucosa and submucosa, and this is called as the muscularis mucosa. The muscles under the mucosa, meaning. Okay, this is an extra layer. Are these the actual bulk muscles? No, just an additional layer separating mucosa from the submucosa. The epithelium or the mucosa is different from part to part, depending on what, and this is important to know, depending on what, depending on the expected type of um, friction. What are you dealing with? Are you dealing with mechanical or chemical friction? Should I protect you more against mechanical trauma or chemical trauma? So this part here, starting in the stomach, going down, this is stratified squamous epithelium. I'm mentioning in specifically because it is important. What kind of epithelium do you have here? Stratified squamous epithelium. And what's good about that? Because this type is good for mechanical trauma. It's protecting you against mechanical trauma, which is expected, right? This is like you put the food in your mouth. This is a trauma, right? And then you keep on chewing, trauma. And then it moves down when you swallow. It is impacting the inner of the inside of the esophagus. It's physical trauma, mechanical trauma. Stratified squamous epithelium is very good in this. It's very good protection against mechanical. Starting from the stomach, this is another issue because in the stomach, you're going to digest even more. And guess what? The food that's leaving the stomach is paste like. This is how soft it is. No more needs to the mechanical protection. We need chemical protection. So, what kind of epithelium is protecting against the chemical trauma? Simple columnar epithelium. You should remember this. So stratified squamous until the end of the esophagus, and then everything else is simple columnar epithelium. Specifically, yes, because the first one is protecting against mechanical trauma, and this one is for chemical trauma. And let me tell you something interesting here. If you guys didn't hear before, it's not like part of this. This is just for your own information. You know, if one of us is having the continuous heartburn, you're having the regurg, you always feel like the acid is going up. Why this is very critical and very important to deal with? Because the esophagus is not built to deal with acids, right? It contains stratified squamous epithelium. This is good for mechanical protection, yes. But if that happen, if the acid keep on going up to the esophagus, burning, going up, burning, burning, burning. What's end up happening, if that the case, that this epithelium, the stratified squamous epithelium, is going to change and become, you know what? Okay, so you're dealing with me as if I'm stomach or something. You're burning me with acid all the time. Okay, I'm going to change my epithelium, and I'm going to make it simple columnar epithelium. And what's bad about that? Precancerous. This is precancerous. Once they see that in endoscopy, they have to deal with it. They will tell you if somebody's having this, your mucosa is changing, which means that's precancerous. Okay, and that's why if somebody having heartburn all the time, you have to get medication. If the medication is not working, you have to deal with it, even if you have to have endoscopy. Because if they find something like that, they have to deal with it, burn it, remove it, whatever it is. It's precancer. And just for your information, anytime, anytime you change the nature of anything in our body, it's precancerous. Okay? So this is the deal here, and the difference between stratified squamous epithelium and simple columnar epithelium. The glands that secrete in the intestine are called Endocrine gland. Translation. Entero means intestine or digestive. Endocrine. Endocrine. What's endocrine? Do you remember the endocrine system? What do we secrete in the endocrine system? Hormones. Hormones. So we do secrete hormones in the digestive system. Yes, we didn't focus much on it when we did the endocrine system, but now we should. We will understand these different hormones. Lamina propria, it's just connective tissue, and it contains a lot of things, including blood vessels and nerves and lymphatics and muscles and so on. Muscularis mucosa is the name that you should remember, and the name, give it away. Think about it. Don't take anything as it is. It's called muscularis mucosa. Muscularis is muscle, right? And mucosa is this layer. So what does it mean? Muscles under the mucosa, muscularis mucosa. This thin layer of muscles under the mucosa. And then the actual muscles will be at the end. Then the submucosa, and I mentioned the submucosa, it contains blood vessels, nerves, and lymphatics. And there is the nerve plexus, and I repeated it like 2 or 3 times because I know it's important and you will be asked about it. I'm being specific here. Okay? These plexuses, you'll be asked about it, lecture and lab. The submucosal plexus and the myenteric plexus. Here are the muscles, and again, it is inner circular and outer longitudinal. It's all about the position. Inner circular, outer longitudinal, irrespective of how it looks like. Let me ask you this question. Sympathetic versus parasympathetic. Which one increase the muscle activities of the digestive tract and which one decrease the muscle activities? Sympathetic increase the muscle activities. If you are imagine you are in a fight. This is part of the digestive system. If you are in a fight, decrease it, right? Think about it this way. Sympathetic means I'm fighting. Is that a good time to contract? You know what will happen if we contract our muscles? The food will move and you need to go to the bathroom. Just think about it this way to remember it. Parasympathetic, on the other hand, yes, this is a good time, right? Resting, digesting. Is that the good time to move things around? Yes, why not, right? This is a good time. We are absorbing and moving things around. What else are we busy doing, right? Are we fighting or something? So this is the action of sympathetic and parasympathetic. Myenteric plexus is that plexus that's located in between those two layers, and myenteric translation is muscles. It's the plexus in the muscles, myenteric plexus. You have to remember that. The outer layer is called serosa. What's a serosa? It's a serous membrane, connective tissue, the outer cover. Um, there is something called adventitia. I talked about it, and here it is again. Serosa and adventitia is basically the same thing. The only difference is serosa is the outermost for the part of the digestive tract that's enclosed with the peritoneal membrane. Other parts, we call it adventitia. This is the only difference. It's just which part are we talking about? Is it different? No, it's not different. Both of them are connective tissue. Both of them are the outer layer. Okay? Serous membrane. It's the same thing. It's all about the parts that's enclosed in the peritoneal cavity versus the other parts. Serosa adventitia. What kind of motility do we have in the digestive system? There are different things, different types, but there are pace setters. Do you remember in the heart what was your pacemaker? SA node. We have something similar to that in our intestine, but there is no specific name for it because it's not one, it's a lot. We just call it the pace setter cells. It's a lot of cells. What's a pace setter? Just like the pacemaker. Remember the pacemaker? They give you these electrical signals, right? Same thing here. In the heart, you get electrical signal, you contract. Yes. The pace setter cells, electrical signal, contract. It's the same idea. But in the heart, it's called pacemaker. Here, it's called pace setter. That's the only difference. Types of movements. This is also something important to understand. Let me say it this way. What are the types of movements in our digestive tract? Two types. Number one, you put the food in your mouth, you start to chew it, start to move down, right? And then there is this movement. If this is the food, behind it, and you start push it, push it, push it, push it in one direction only. Okay? And this is called peristalsis. Is there is another movement? Yes. Here is the other movement. Like when you put the food in your mouth and you swallow, right? What are you going to do in the esophagus? Nothing. Just move the food down, right? Until you go to the stomach. And then you go to the intestine, and the situation is different now. Why? Because in the intestine, you do not want just to push it all the way to the anus. That's not practical. What you do in there is you push the food into one direction and then you reverse it and go back. Forward, backward, forward, backward, forward, backward. Why are you doing this? More exposure, more contact between the foods and the wall of the intestine to absorb as much as possible. So you move it forward, you absorb. And then you move it backward, you absorb. Forward, backward, until you get all what you need. And then peristalsis will come, push it to the next segment. So these are the two different types of movements that we have to understand. Peristalsis is one way from the mouth all the way to the anus, depending on which part are we talking about. If you are in the beginning of the esophagus, you move it to the middle, and stomach to the duodenum. Duodenum, you push it and so on. You go all the way in one way. The other movement let me show you this first. You're moving in one direction like this, push, 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 one way from the mouth toward the anus. This is the peristalsis. Look how we contract before it, and in front of it, it's free. It's not contracting. So when you contract behind it, you push it forward. Contract and push. Segmentation is the other one because it goes like this. Look, segment, this segment, you push it forward. And then you get this segment in front of it and you push it backward. Segmentation. You move from segment to segment, from segment to segment. How many times? Until you get what you need. And then peristalsis will push it to the next part, and so on. So this is the mixing movement. Segmentation is a mixing movement. Peristalsis, one-way movement. This is only to push it forward in one direction. Mixing is segmentation, or segmentation is mixing. Of course, you need to remember this. Segmentation is mixing. How about if we're done? Yes, peristalsis will come and push it for you in one direction only. How do we regulate our digestive system? The whole body, the whole body is regulated by the nervous system and endocrine system. Do you remember this? Basics. Every single part of our body is controlled by nervous system and endocrine system. What's the difference? The nervous system is for fast orders, for fast control, right? Immediately. Touch something, you move away. Nervous system. Hormonal system or endocrine system is different. My blood calcium goes up. Do we reverse it immediately? Of course not. You have to understand that the blood calcium is moving up or moving down, and then you start to make vitamin D and start to release. It takes time. This is what I mean. So this is the slow control. There is a third part that's called the local control, and this is something that's unique for the digestive system. It's not just the nervous system and the endocrine system. There is a local factors. These local factors are pH. This can give us a signal, and we act according to that signal. pH, it's become acidic, it become alkaline, we will deal with it. Volume, chemical composition, stretching of the intestine like this. If the food is moving down here, let's say in the small intestine here, right? The food is moving down. Of course, it's going to stretch the wall, right? Stretching the wall means you need to move it. Stretching this wall, push it, right? Why do I need my nervous system or endocrine system is in something that's very similar like this, very simple like this? Did you get the idea? There is no need. This is expanding, stretching, push it. That's it. You don't have to involve your nervous system and endocrine system. It's not something major. So we have this local, take care of yourself, right? Like if you're working in a factory, they will tell you, like if the electricity is not working, just flip this and push it backward, and that's you don't have to come to me. It's too simple. You do it yourself. Okay, just return this button right there. That's it. Okay, if it is heating, just turn on the fan. You don't have to tell me. If it is something major, you have to let me know. This is the same thing. So these are the local things. Stretching, okay, we're going to contract. pH, okay, we're going to correct it locally. There are factors that are local, like prostaglandin and histamine, and you need to remember those because these are the local factors through which we mediate the local function or the local action. Okay. Remember I told you about the two plexuses? One of them is in the submucosa, and the other one is in the mind. The myenteric one is in the muscles. Of course, since it is in the muscles, it is the one that's telling the muscles to contract, and that's why we have it there, which is the myenteric plexus. Now we have two types of reflexes, according to what I just mentioned. Remember what control do we have? Nervous system, endocrine system. This is the general control of everything. And then we have local systems, right? Is that okay for this part? Okay. Now the reflexes are two types: short reflex and long reflex. Short reflex is a local one. What's a short reflex? Short reflex is like this, exactly. The food is here, and I want to move it here. That's it. Stretching, push. Do I need my nervous system in this? Do I need the central nervous system? It is too simple. Okay, so this is the local one. This piece and this piece right beside it. Okay, this part of the stomach versus this part, or this part of the stomach versus like pylorus and duodenum beside it. If it is beside it, it's too close. I do not need to involve the central nervous system. I can do a reflex locally. How? Food is here, stretch, signal goes, and the signal comes back, contract. I don't need the nervous system here, central nervous system. What is what is controlling this? You have to send information to something, and this something tell you to contract. Are we following? Muscles, the digestive tract here is there is food, right? Stretching. This is a signal, stretch. So there is neuron will take it from there, and then you contract. What's in between? Sensory, motor. What's in between? Not the nervous system. What is it then? It is the ganglia around the intestinal tract. There are ganglia. There are collections of nerve cells beside the digestive tract, and this is what's going to mediate. So, what's the most important thing to know here about the short versus the long? And it's important to know. Number one, the short control two parts that are very close to each other. This is number one. Number two, does not involve central nervous system. How does it work? Who is managing it? Group of neurons beside the tract, not the nervous system, not the central nervous system, not the brain, not the spinal cord. It's something local. So it is local. How about the long? The long if there is a long distance between two different parts. Okay, and then in this case, you have to involve the central nervous system. Give me example. I'll give you example. Food is in your stomach. You're digesting the food in your stomach. Okay, moving down, intestine, absorption, 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 absorption. Okay, it's in the small intestine now. And then you're eating again, and the food go to your stomach. You're working on it. Your next step is to move the food out of the stomach to the intestine. You have to empty the space, right? How to empty the space? You're going to tell the last part, which is the ileum, kick off what you have because there is another load coming. There is a big difference or big distance between the stomach right here and the ileum down here, right? This huge part. And this is a long distance, so we call it long reflex. And this involve the central nervous system. Did you guys get this part? This is important to understand. And I told you the differences. What does it mean and what is controlling it? And which is local, which is involving the central nervous system. Hormones, on the other hand, there are different enteroendocrine cells or yeah, enteroendocrine cells that we will talk about that will be controlling our digestive system. This is like repeating what we just talked about, but look at this. This is just the simple one. Look at this. Stretch, short reflex, it go to these local nerve cells, which is my enteric plexus, and then you just contract. Look at the long one. You have to involve the central nervous system, and this is called the long reflex. Now going part by part. Oral cavity. What we do with the oral cavity? You put the food in your mouth. Yes. What do you do with the food in your mouth? Number one, you taste it, right? Once you put it in your mouth, you taste. So taste is number one. You get the sensation. And then you do the mechanical digestion, right? You keep on chewing on the food, breaking it down, and we call that mechanical digestion. What's a mechanical digestion? Big pieces become small pieces, okay? Lubrication. You know that the saliva in your mouth is going to lubricate the food, even if you eat something like a piece of bread. This is not moist enough, right? You're going to secrete saliva to moisturize it and lubricate it. Okay? Is that all what you do in your mouth? No, there is one more thing. We start the process of mechanical digestion in the mouth, even though it is very tiny, small amount, but still count. Okay, we secrete two secretions that you have to know. Let me tell you this, just to be clear. Any secretion that you see in this chapter is a question. Any secretion. If you wanted to make a table, do whatever you want, I'm going to ask you about it. Any secretions. So here, what kind of secretion do we have? Saliva, this is one, and there are enzymes that will help you in the chemical digestion. Chemical digestion. What are these? From the tongue, lingual lipase. So what does it digest? Can you tell me what does it work on? It's called lipase from the name. Fat, yes, it's called lipase. Lipid ACE. What's ACE? ACE is an enzyme that breaks down. When you see ASE at the end, rule of the thumb. When you see ASE at the end, it means an enzyme that breaks down something. Lipase, enzyme that break down fat. Protease, enzyme that break down proteins. Are we following? Anything end with ACE is an enzyme that break down something. So there is lingual lipase and salivary amylase. What's a salivary? From the name, obviously, it comes in the saliva, right? What's a salivary amylase? Amylase. Amyl is sugar, carbohydrates. So these are the two enzymes secreted from the mouth, and these are going to it just start the process. This is not the main part. The main chemical digestion is in the stomach and intestine. The mouth just start a little part. Amyl means carbohydrates. Ase, it's short for enzyme that break down something. Oral mucosa, the mucosa of the mouth, we know goes without saying. We have two parts of mucosa. Do you remember this? What do we have from the mouth until the end of the esophagus? What kind of mucosa? Stra stratified squamous epithelium. And from the stomach down, simple columnar. Yes. So what do we have in the mouth? Stratified squamous epithelium. How about the pharynx? Stratified squamous epithelium. How about the esophagus? Stratified squamous epithelium. It's just two parts, right? So this is what we have in the mouth. And there are certain names that we need to know, like what's the oral vestibule? It's between the cheeks and the teeth. Gingiva, gum, uvula, we talked about it before. Remember in the back of the mouth? What the function of the uvula? Yes, prevent anything in the mouth to go to the nose. There are palatoglossal arch, an arch between the palate and the tongue. Palatopharyngeal arch, an arch between the palate and the pharynx. And those two arches in between, there are tonsils. We have a model like this. Do you guys remember we did it? Do you remember that? Here is the palatine tonsil. How did you know that this is palatine tonsil? This is the palate, right? This is under the palate, palatine tonsil. Does anybody remember what do we call this? Adenoids. Yes, pharyngeal or adenoids. And what's the third one here? Lingual. We have three. Here is the uvula, all the way in the back. Here is the tonsil, and it's in between those two arches. Palatoglossal and palatopharyngeus. The name gave it away. Palatoglossal between the palate and the tongue. Palatopharyngeus between the palate and pharynx. Tongue, here is a secretion. Lingual lipase. Lingual lipase. When you see secretion, it's even bold. Okay? So I have to know it. Lingual lipase. And what's the other one? Salivary amylase. Yes. The tongue itself consists of body, roots. There is something called frenulum or frenum. If you move like roll your tongue up like this, you will see something like hanging in the middle of the tongue, right? It's pulling it down. This is called frenulum. And there are extrinsic muscles, the muscles outside, which move the whole tongue, and intrinsic muscles. These are the inside muscles that change the shape of the tongue. And then we have the teeth. The teeth, what's the outermost and strongest layer of the tooth, of the teeth? Enamel. And what's the next? That's still strong as the bone. The dentine. And what's the cavity inside? Pulp cavity. And what's the cavity in the root? Root canal. And there is cement that's cementing. We did that in the lab. Cementing the dentine to the bone. And there are periodontal ligaments. I talked about this. Peri is around. Periodontal ligaments, the ligaments around uh, the teeth. On the other hand, and I told you guys in the lab, your lab exam is next Tuesday, right? This coming Tuesday. So that's why I'm still talking about this a little bit. Remember, if I put an arrow, if you see an arrow that's pointing to this part of the teeth that you can see, you have two answers. So you have to read. Are you asking me about this part, this whole thing part that I can see, which we call it the crown, or are you talking about this layer, like enamel or dentine? Did you guys get my idea? Because I see that all the time. I see like an arrow, crown. Okay, crown. But I asked you, what is this layer? Crown is not a layer. Crown is the whole teeth that you see outside. What do we call the inside of the bone? root, the root. These are parts. It's different. Okay. So enamel, remember, enamel is the strongest one. And followed by dentine, followed by cavity. This is if you're talking about layers. If you're talking about parts, there is crown, there is neck, and then here is a crown up here, here is a neck in the middle, and this is a root. If you're talking about layers, enamel, dentine, cavity. Pulp cavity is in a crown, and root canal in the root. The types of teeth, there are upper teeth attached to the maxilla, we call it maxillary, and teeth attached to the mandible, the lower ones, mandibular. Okay, and it is the same names, just repeat the whole thing. Okay, and we have different types of teeth. There are incisors, canine, premolars, and molars. So here it is. These are incisors. Do you guys remember this? I told you can ask you about this in the lab. Remember? Central incisor, lateral incisor, canine. What is this? First premolar, and then second premolar, first molar, second molar, third molar. What's the other name for the third molar? The wisdom teeth. Do we all have it? Uh, not every single person have it. There is a specific age for it. Okay, so we have incisors, the one that's for cutting, canine, slashing or tearing, premolars. These have flat crowns, so it's for crushing. And then the molars are also for crushing and grinding. Types of teeth are, and this is something important, deciduous teeth or the milk teeth, primary teeth. Is there a difference? No. Different names for the same thing. Rule of the thumb, you have to know it. Deciduous, primary, baby, milk teeth. Yes, all of this is the same thing. And they have only 20. How many in adults? Not 34. Or 28 or 32, depending on did you get the wisdom teeth or not. Okay, so if you are like 18, I'm an adult. Do I have the wisdom teeth? Not necessarily, right? Not necessarily. You can have it 21, you can have it 22, you're still an adult. So adult, it can be 28 or 32. And if you divide, because they have the same name, you don't have to repeat. If you divide 32, so it's 16 and 16, isn't it? If you divide the 16, 8, 8. 8, 8, 8, 8, all of them have the same name. So whatever I said, central incisor, lateral incisor, canine, first premolar, second premolar, first molar, second molar, third molar, same thing here, same thing here, same thing here. They have the same name. Okay, so how many? This is a good question. How many deciduous teeth do we have? 20. 5, 5, 5, 5. And what are the deciduous teeth or the temporary or the milk, whatever you want to call it? It is there and then it's going to fall and then we're going to replace it by the permanent ones. What is missing here? Like the adults, I told you, incisors, canine, premolars, and molars. Here we have two incisors, just like the adults, one canine, just like the adults. And this is the difference here. You don't have two premolars. You don't have two premolars and two or three molars. No, you just have two deciduous molars. That's it. Instead of four or five, they only have two. This is the only difference. So the difference is molars. Here it is. Starting from here, central incisor, lateral incisor, canine, and the two teeth. So when you see that, it's a baby. Permanent teeth, 82 if you have the wisdom teeth. And here it is, two premolars and three molars if you have the wisdom tooth. What do we have in the babies instead of those five? Two. We have two only. And this is how it looks like. This is how we count it. The exact specific age is not something that's very important. I just want you to remember this one. It's 17 to 21. So I'm 20. I don't have it. And you're 19 and you have it. That's okay. It's a range. So just remember this one. Otherwise, it's what we already talked about. Upper teeth, lower teeth, same thing. Salivary glands, this is the next part. And the salivary glands, we have three pairs of salivary glands. Parotid, sublingual, submandibular. Parotid, right here. If you clench your mouth and feel the muscles here, it's above it. It's superficial to it, right here. Parotid. Sublingual, the name give it away. Sublingual, under what? Under the tongue. Submandibular, under the mandible, right? These are the three pairs. Parotid gland. Its duct, the gland is here, and the duct goes like this and go in, secrete inside your cheeks. And this one contain amylase, salivary amylase. It empty in the vestibule at the second upper molar. Sublingual. What does it secrete? Does it also secrete salivary amylase? No. This one secrete mucus secretion. Did we get the difference? We have three pairs, not all of them are the same. Parotid is the big one. This is the one that secretes the amylase, the enzyme, salivary amylase. How about the sublingual, these tiny under the tongue? They secrete mucus. How about the submandibular? It's a mix. Both of those. Clear? This part clear? Parotid, salivary amylase. This is the enzyme. Sublingual, mucus. Submandibular, both. This is what I want you to know here. And each one of those will have its own duct that end up secreting inside the oral cavity. Look here. This is the parotid gland. This is the duct. It open inside. This is your tongue, under the tongue, sublingual. This is the parotid, and here is the the submandibular, and this is submandibular duct. Parotid. Yes, this is the one that secrete the enzyme. Sublingual, mucus. Submandibular, both of them. Okay? Saliva, mainly water. Submandibular gland is the one that's here, is the main participant. It's the main one that secrete the saliva, that make the saliva, followed by the parotid, even though the parotid is big in size, but it's number two. Sublingual gland is the one that's under the tongue, which is 5% only. And the vast 99.4% is water. What else do you have with the water? I have mucus coming from sublingual. I have salivary amylase coming from the parotid and from the submandibular, both of them. And then the rest is buffer and electrolytes and different things. Saliva is not just for lubrication, it's for lubrication, that's one. Chemical digestion, two things. What do we digest in the mouth? Salivary amylase, amyl, sugar. What else? Lipase, lingual lipase, fat. Do we digest proteins? No. No, we don't digest proteins in the mouth. And this is only starting the digestion. Okay? Besides, we have buffers in our mouth. So what if I'm drinking something that contain acids? Your saliva is going to neutralize it. Okay? So it will keep the pH. It's not one function. It's lubrication. It is chemical digestion. Two things. It's mucus secretion. It's keeping the pH. All of these are the different functions. The usual question that we will always see, or what we're going to always talk about, is sympathetic and parasympathetic. Rule of the thumb. All activities of the digestive system are suppressed by the sympathetic, are increased by the parasympathetic. That's it. Contraction or secretion. Clear, that's it. You don't have to keep on repeating everything. It is the rule of the thumb right there. All activities, contraction or secretion. It goes without saying. If I ask you about anything, mucus secretion, sympathetic decrease it and parasympathetic increase it. Pancreatic secretion, same thing. Intestinal secretion, same thing. It's all the same. Muscle contract, same thing. It's all the same thing. Okay? Sympathetic, suppress all activities because this is not the time for the digestive system. Parasympathetic, increase all activities. What do you mean by activities? Contractions and secretions. Clear? Contractions and secretions. The mastication is the chewing, and we open and close our mouth using our teeth to do different things depending on its shape. And at the same time, saliva is coming with the mucus secretion and buffer to do its work. And when you're done chewing, you end up swallowing, right? You swallow that. You swallow what? Here is a very important name. What do you swallow? Something called bolus of food, specifically. You swallow the bolus of food. It's called bolus. Something looks like an egg. This is how the food leaving the mouth looks like. Bolus is something that's important to remember. And when you swallow, it goes to the pharynx. Which part of the pharynx? Food in your mouth. The bolus leaves. Go to what? Which part of the pharynx? Go to the nasopharynx above? To the oropharynx. It's the oral cavity behind it, oropharynx. And then laryngopharynx, and then it goes to the esophagus. Esophagus is a long tube. And remember, we have two sphincters, upper and lower sphincter. What's the other name for the lower esophageal sphincter? No, somebody have to tell me. We talked about that in the lab. What is the other name for the lower esophageal sphincter? What's after the esophagus? What's the part of the stomach after the esophagus? Anybody? What's the first part of the stomach after the esophagus? Under the esophagus, what do you call it? There is fundus, and there is body, and there is cardia. Cardia. So what do you call that? I just told you. Cardiac sphincter. Yes.